Welcome to the Inside Elections podcast, where we analyze elections in a nonpartisan, data-driven, and accessible way. In this episode, we'll preview the two biggest elections of this fall, the races for governor in New Jersey and Virginia. And we'll do it with help from Abby Turner of National Journal's Hotline. Buckle up. I'm Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections, the go-to place for nonpartisan analysis for more than 40 years. And I spent a beautiful weekend with my family camping at Cunningham Falls State Park in Maryland's 6th District, which is represented by Democrat April McClain Delaney.
And I'm Jacob Rubashkin, the deputy editor of Inside Elections, and I am headed to New York's 19th District this weekend, which is represented by Democrat Josh Riley, who I happened to see on the street a couple days ago, but didn't get a chance to talk to because he was trying very hard to connect with an Uber driver that he could not find on the phone.
Wow. So wait, the Uber driver had been kidnapped or was having trouble locating the congressman?
No. Riley and his staffer were outside of a hotel and they were trying to locate the Uber driver who was not where they expected him to be. And I intended to go up and say hello to him and tell him that I was headed up to Ithaca this weekend, which is where he lives. But he was clearly, if he wasn't very busy, he was doing a good job of acting like he was trying to find this Uber driver.
For those of you that aren't in Washington or don't go to the Capitol frequently, one of the moves that members of Congress use to avoid reporters is to put their cell phone up to their ear. But reporters can tell when they're not talking, they're not really on the phone. When their screen, it's just their home screen, like on their phone. So that's a DC of Capitol Hill Congress member.
Oldest trick in the book, yeah.
Well, I don't know if in the 1800s if they were using that trick.
It would hold up a quill to their ear.
I like it. All right, well, let's talk about some headlines. Before we talk about Virginia and New Jersey, there's a lot of other news going on. Jacob, what should people not miss?
Missouri passed a new congressional map that dismantles the Kansas City-based 5th District, changing it from a district that Kamala Harris would have won by double digits to one that Trump would have carried by nearly 20 points. That would mean the end of the line for longtime Democratic Rep. Emanuel Cleaver. But the map itself is being challenged in court by Democrats. And Democrats also have a very long shot chance to call a statewide referendum on this issue and hit pause on the new map before its implementation in the 2026 elections.
Usually I reserve the discomfort of redistricting for every 10 years, but now we get to go through that mid-decade.
Oh yeah.
Former vice presidential nominee Tim Walz announced that he will seek a third term as governor of Minnesota. Minnesota is still a Democratic-leaning state, but no governor has been elected to 3 consecutive terms, going back more than 60 years. Republicans have to sort through a primary, though, before trying to prevent Walz from making history.
Yeah, and back when that last happened with the 3 consecutive terms were only 2 years long. So it's nobody has ever done it in the era of 4-year terms in Minnesota. Walz would be the first. In Kentucky, former Secret Service agent and attorney Logan Forsythe entered the Senate race as a Democrat this week. That name sounds familiar. It's because yours truly, reported that Forsythe was likely to run for the open seat almost 2 months ago, long before any other outlet was on the story. The personal injury attorney joins retired Air Force Colonel Pam Stevenson in the Democratic primary and would be an underdog in the general election for Mitch McConnell's open seat.
The lesson here is people should read Inside Elections.
Yeah.
I know we're nonpartisan, but I am biased toward people reading what we do, because you are constantly dropping in potential candidates and future candidates into articles, and people would know these things ahead of time if they read more of what you wrote. So
no.
Two Texas congressmen unexpectedly announced that they would not seek re-election next year. Longtime Congressman Mike McCall and second-term Congressman Morgan Luttrell, who both represent part of the Houston area. Republicans will be favored to win both of those seats next year, but the Texas delegation is going to see considerable turnover as a result of those exits and the state's mid-decade redistricting that is pushing out up to a handful of Democrats. Other Republicans, Chip Roy, another Texas congressman, is running for state attorney general, so he's leaving. Overall, though, there are 27 House members that are not seeking re-election up to this point, and the vast majority of them are running for something else, either running for Senate or running for governor. Jacob, you've written about governors, how there's 17 open seats, so
Yeah,
no
it's a
incumbents,
lot.
and that is drawing a lot of members to those races. But yeah, Texas, a big shakeup in the Texas delegation.
I think the average net worth of members of Congress is going to decrease considerably without McCall there. Certainly, if he and Issa lose next, if he leaves and Issa loses, the House is going to take a real hit in its average net worth after 2026.
People are definitely going to be feeling bad for Congress, I'm sure.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
a lot of
it's terrible news.
I want to welcome our special guest, Abby Turner of National Journal's Hotline, where she works with a friend of the podcast, Kirk Beto. Before the Hotline, Abby was editor-in-chief of the American University Eagle, which I'm beginning to think that it is a prerequisite to be a editor-in-chief of your college paper. But Abby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on.
Now, Abby, before we get into a couple of big races, please tell us what congressional district you grew up in.
So I grew up in Ohio's 12th congressional district, so it was Pat Tiberi forever. And I think in 2018, that's when Troy Balderson won. But after the 2020 census, I had moved out. But my family now lives in the 4th congressional district, which is Jim Jordan.
So back then, that's north of Columbus, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, so I'm in Delaware County.
Okay. We drive across Ohio regularly because my wife's family she's from Indiana, but okay. I think we hit 30. I don't think we come all the way down to where you're from. Now, what was life like in north of Columbus growing up?
Very quiet, very quaint, like quintessential suburb. It was a very nice place to grow up, but they always tease me here that I grew up on a cornfield, which is not true. Lived in a regular neighborhood, but that's one of their favorite bits to tease me about here at the Hotline. It was a great place to grow up, but always knew that I wanted to end up in DC someday.
And was your family, were there threads of politics or journalism or neither or both, or how did you end up on this podcast with us?
Yeah, so my grandfather growing up, actually, he owned a newspaper in Dublin, Ohio, which is kind of the town next to ours. It's where both my parents grew up. So they had like a bi-weekly paper, and he was a columnist. So he would write about like kind of central Ohio politics, kind of what's happening nationally. So I always grew up with the stories of my mom saying, oh my gosh, I'll never forget when, Grandpa Jim would whip the car in a U-turn and we'd have to go to a car crash to cover it for the paper. So I grew up more with like the local news angle on that side. And unfortunately, my grandfather had passed away before I realized that I wanted to be a journalist, kind of around the beginning of high school time. But that was always something I carried with me was, he got to do this work. So it's really cool that I get to do it on a different level here in DC.
And I think you're also following in the tradition of state correspondence at National Journal coming from Ohio, because Mary Frances, now at Cleveland.com, Ohio native as well. So politics and journalism are nothing but businesses of tradition in some fundamental ways.
Correct.
And I feel like maybe I shouldn't be on this podcast because I was not editor-in-chief of my school paper in college. But Jacob, is there anything that two editors, former editors-in-chief, should commiserate about?
Oh gosh, I don't even want to. I feel like I was the luckiest man alive, graduating in 2019 and being done that year, and I just am in awe of the editors at my college paper, but I think this goes for editors everywhere who have managed to shepherd their papers through COVID and the post-COVID years. I think that is like a challenge that rivals and probably exceeds anything I ever had to deal with at my paper. So hats off to you that the paper still exists and that you were able to make it work for you even after everything that's happened with the news business over the last couple of years.
Yeah, someone told me before I started, they were like, being the editor-in-chief of a college newspaper is probably going to be one of the hardest things that you ever do. And I was like, this is just, an organization that I spend my free time doing in college. And then a year later, I was like, yeah, that actually probably was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And I'm going to be okay in journalism now that I've, been through that experience and dealt with things at the age of like 21 and 22 that I probably should not have dealt with.
Yeah, it's like after the third lawsuit threat of a single week, it's like you're ready to take on the world.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the most difficult thing you've ever done until this podcast, Abby. So get ready. No, well, we have a couple big races coming up, so let's jump in.
100% MAGA. That's what Donald Trump calls Jack Ciattarelli, because Ciattarelli wants to be the Trump of Trenton.
I support the president wholeheartedly, and my job is to help him.
Ciattarelli supported Trump's Medicaid cuts, targeting 300,000 in Jersey. And now he's talking about a 10% sales tax.
The 10% sales tax on everything, including food and clothing.
Jack Ciattarelli, 100% MAGA, 100% wrong for New Jersey.
We all know it. New Jersey's a mess. And all Mikey Sherrill wants to talk about is President Trump. Come on. What does the president have to do with rising property taxes and higher electricity bills? New Jersey's a mess because out-of-touch politicians like Bill Murphy and Mikey Sherrill care more about pronouns and sanctuary cities than they do solving our problems. That changes when I'm governor. I'll lower electricity bills, cut and cap property taxes, and keep our communities safe. Folks, it's time to fix New Jersey. When I'm governor, we will.
Those were just a couple of the ads from this race. Abby, you've written a piece about both the New Jersey and Virginia governor's races, but as we focus on New Jersey, you wrote about the rising costs and as a major point of contention. How are both parties trying to capitalize on voter frustration with their finances?
I would say New Jersey, the big thing right now is energy costs. I had talked to a GOP strategist for that article, and she had said, never seen this before, but energy is like the issue in the election right now. It's interesting because I think what you're seeing in New Jersey and Virginia right now is Democrats trying to regain being the party of affordability. It's something that they've struggled with in the last few election cycles. When you look at inflation during the Biden era, it was very easy for Republicans to kind of attack them on that. And they're trying to regain their footing as, the party of pragmatic issues. How are they going to address, what people see on a day-to-day basis? So what that looks like for Mikey Sherrill right now in New Jersey is focusing a lot on energy costs. She has proposed on day one to freeze utility bills, which Governor Phil Murphy has doubted whether that's kind of going to be feasible or not. But interestingly, I think where the point of contention comes within Democrats' platform here is some of their energy policies are tied towards green energy. So looking at solar, wind farms as more long-term projects to bring down costs. But really what voters are concerned with right now is how are they going to see their electric bill decreased on day one? And I think that's something that both parties are going to really struggle with addressing whoever wins that governor's seat.
How important are those rising energy costs to the competitiveness of this race, right? Because we don't always think about New Jersey as this battleground state, but there's clearly a sense this cycle that to the extent that either of these two races are highly, highly competitive, New Jersey is at the top of that list. And it seems like a big part of that is dissatisfaction with the outgoing Murphy administration. Like you said, he's been skeptical about some of Mikey Sherrill's plans. How big a reason is this particular issue in making this a real race?
I think it's a huge issue, and I think you're seeing that in the ads. I think both sides have traded ads about the rising cost of energy, but something that's going to really add to the competitiveness from Ciattarelli's side is it's very easy for him to tie Mikey Sherrill to Governor Murphy's energy plans. What the Republicans have started to do, and the article touched on this a little bit, is previously a lot of kind of green energy plans, when you look at, wind farms, in water, have hit on this is bad for the environment. They've now flipped that switch and say, oh, these green initiatives that, we've seen come out of the Murphy administration that maybe want to prioritize clean energy over something that could increase the carbon footprint, that's actually the reason why you're seeing these rising energy costs. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I think the issue for Cheryl that she's going to face in this competitive race as, the Democrat that's trying to succeed a Democratic governor is it's very easy for Chitterelli to tie what's happening in Murphy's administration to rising costs and saying that, Cheryl's going to be the continuation of that.
And to what, for those of you that are listening outside that don't live in New Jersey, which is probably many of you, you say, well, why are we talking about this race now? And I think it's important to remember that the New Jersey and Virginia gubernatorial races often get a disproportionate amount of attention because they're the only two big races going on in the country right now. And it's sort of everyone is looking for indications of what the political environment is right now. What is it? Has it changed since 2024? And what is it ahead of 2026? And so, Abby, my question is, are you hearing about, along with the message testing or the campaign messages, are you hearing about either party testing, using this race as a testing ground for, the 2026 midterms when there's, a whole host of other races going on?
Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of people about this for the energy story because I think it's very interesting when you're looking at Democrats' affordability messaging. It's something that they really want to hone in on this year, but looking towards 2026, I think it's going to be something you're going to see more in these midterm races. One thing that is interesting, though, with this issue of energy, it's something that's very localized, and you're seeing it in Virginia and New Jersey because they're both on the same energy grid. So while that, we can look at it now and say, oh, Democrats are really focused on energy because of these two races. That might not be the case. Someone I talked to said that, you could look at Pennsylvania and they're not having the same energy crisis. So the messaging that you're testing out in New Jersey, talking about, slashing utility bills on day one, isn't going to be something that resonates as much in Pennsylvania. So they're going to have to find other areas within this broader affordability messaging, whether it be healthcare after the big, beautiful bill, or looking at grocery prices, housing prices, that's going to be pertinent in that state for the issues that they are facing, because energy costs, while across the country are something that people are probably worried about every day, they might not be to the same caliber that New Jersey and Virginia are facing.
One of the big disagreements in this race between Chitterelli and Cheryl seems to be the role that President Trump will play in both of their electoral chances. We heard Democrats trying to tie Chitterelli to Trump, calling him MAGA Jack. We heard Chitterelli, even though in that ad he said all Democrats want to talk about is Trump, he wants to talk about Trump more than he ever has in the past. This is his third time running for governor, and he's by far the most comfortable this time around, talking about supporting Trump, working with Trump, being Trump's partner in Trenton and the White House. So he's clearly undergone an evolution here as well. But somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong, right? Trump is either going to be a good topic for Democrats or a good topic for Republicans. So you've been looking at this race. Which one do you think it is? Ultimately, who benefits from having Trump in the White House this year?
I think if you were to look at the state of New Jersey, day after Election Day in November, it looks really good for Republicans. Biden led Trump in 2020 by double digits. Harris only led Trump in 2024 by single digits. So that right there tells you, he is getting more popular in the state. He also gained across the country with Latino voters. But there's been, many months since Trump has taken office that, voters are going to be paying attention to what's happening in Washington. And I think one big area that you're going to see in New Jersey be impacted is the Latino vote. Latinos make up about 1/5 of New Jersey's population. And I think there's been some great reporting out there about how they are impacted by rising costs, but they're also looking at what the Trump administration is doing with federal immigration enforcement. And that's kind of, turning them against Trump. Whether that's going to trickle down into Chitterelli is, I think, going to be the question. But I think voters are definitely going to be paying attention to what has happened in the Trump administration. And I don't know if you're going to see the same New Jersey that you saw in November 2024.
What are the two candidates doing to try and appeal to those Latino voters who have, really established themselves as a core swing constituency that we saw, swing from Biden to Trump between 20 and 24, and even from Murphy in 21, which was a very close race, even closer than the 24 election. But Phil Murphy did a lot better with Latino voters in 2021 than Kamala Harris did in 2024. So what are Cheryl and Chitterelli doing to try and take advantage of or capitalize on those political shifts that we've seen?
Mm-hmm. I know both have advertisements, outreach in Spanish. Looking at where we are in the election cycle, I do think that could have been done, a lot earlier, immediately after the primary. I think both parties are going to be trying to grab this voter block after the 2024 election.
In my mind, I keep coming back to the evolution of Chitterelli. And Jacob, you mentioned this, where he went from Trump skeptic to kind of Trump maybe denier to full embrace of Trump. And I think there's that's almost a microcosm of how a lot of Republicans around the country have developed in their support for Trump. But what's remarkable is that Republicans are so confident in President Trump that they are embracing him in places where it may not be politically advantageous, right? New Jersey, Trump he did make gains, Abby, as you talked about, but he still lost New Jersey less than a year ago. And he's less popular overall now than he was when he won the 2024 election. So it's kind of remarkable that, full embrace, but in a state, New Jersey's not even a swing state. So, all right, before we talk about Virginia, what are the chances that Democrats do not win this race, Abby? And are you picking up any concern on the Democratic side that this could actually be a loss rather than a boost for the party?
I think the 20 plus million that the Democrats have poured into this race speaks for itself. I think there is a lot of concern that Chitterelli could have third time's a charm and put up a formidable match against Cheryl. In 2021, I think the polling was a big issue where you saw Murphy have, kind of a decent lead over Chitterelli, and he came within 3% of Murphy. So I think you're seeing these very, very tight polls. And I do think that there might be some concern that, Virginia seems pretty solidly like it could go to Spanberger, but I think New Jersey could definitely be a toss-up.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about Virginia.
I'm Abigail Spanberger, mom to 3 girls in public school. Nothing matters more to me than the safety of all our kids. And as a law enforcement officer, I went after child predators. So it really angers me to hear these lies about who I am. I believe we need to get politics out of our schools and trust parents and local communities. As a mom and as your governor, I will be focused on making our schools the best in the nation.
Spanberger for governor.
4 years ago, we rejected career politicians and sent a message: move Virginia forward. But Abigail Spanberger is a Washington insider who voted with Pelosi and Biden every single time. That kind of beltway nonsense will only take us backwards. I'm Winsome Earl Sears. Governor Youngkin put us on the right path. Now I'm asking for your vote to keep it that way. I'm Winsome Earl Sears, candidate for governor, and I sponsor this ad.
Those were two of the ads from the Virginia race for governor, which is featuring Democratic former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger and Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. They are running to replace Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, who is not allowed to seek re-election because in Virginia, you're only allowed to serve one term at a time. You cannot serve 2 consecutive terms. All of that, Abby, why hasn't the Republican Governors Association invested heavily in this race this close to Election Day?
I think Winsome Earl Sears has seen a lot of bumps in her campaign. If you look at the polling and you look at the fundraising, she's consistently trailing Spanberger. And I think that the campaign and the Republican ticket as a whole has really struggled to get off the ground. I think one thing that has really impacted this ticket is looking at John Reed, the scandal with his Tumblr account or a Tumblr account linked to his name, having pictures of naked men on it. Governor Youngkin called him to drop out, and it took weeks for this GOP ticket to appear together in person for the first time. And so I think that the RGA is kind of looking at this and looking at Earl Sears and evaluating, is money better spent in New Jersey or is it better spent in Virginia? Which one's going to have a fighting chance? And I just think this close to the election, Earl Sears' campaign has not gotten off the ground the way that Glenn Youngkin's did this time 4 years ago.
And I think that it's striking that the RGA is more willing to invest in New Jersey than it is in Virginia, because their dollars go further in Virginia, right? In New Jersey, you have to stand up an outside group, an independent expenditure group. You have to pay a higher rate. And those are the two, maybe the two most expensive, or two of the most expensive media markets in the country, in New York and Philadelphia. Whereas in Virginia, they can just cut a check directly to the campaign, right? If they wanted to give Winsome Earl Sears $100 million tomorrow, they could just put that money into her campaign. She could get the candidate rate. It would be a more, this is inside baseball, but like the RGA dollars go further in Virginia than they do in New Jersey. And yet they're still more willing to invest in the New Jersey campaign than in the Virginia campaign. I'm curious, though, some Republicans that we've talked to are happy to see kind of a sharper Earl Sears campaign over the last couple of weeks. They feel like since, she had the latest of many of staff turnovers that she's had, she replaced her campaign manager and has really kind of sharpened her message on school issues in particular. Talk to us about what that shift has been like for her and whether it's proven effective in any of the metrics that we can actually point to and say, this race is getting more competitive for Republicans.
Mm-hmm. She's totally taking a page out of Glenn Youngkin's playbook. She has focused a lot on transgender bathroom policies, sports policies in these school districts in Northern Virginia. She goes to these school board meetings. Sometimes she's allowed to speak. Sometimes they only let residents of those counties speak. So she goes outside and is kind of, I would say, holding pseudo campaign rallies outside these school board meetings and talking about these issues. You see this is dominating the ads that she is putting out. She's talking about, Abigail Spanberger's votes in the House and trying to bring her down on social issues. I think what I'm waiting for is kind of a poll that's going to be conducted during the time that these ads are running, when she's really talking about this on social media, to see what that impact is, but also testing, what are the top issues in the state. Polls have shown that it is cost of living. But now if you do throw in, parental choice or, transgender policies into those polls, how are they going to rank in that? And I think that will be the telltale sign for me is, is this effective? And is it going to have the same impact as it did for Youngkin 4 years ago? But as of right now, I don't think it is going to have the same impact that it had for Youngkin.
And the other thing I think we need to keep in mind, right, is kind of the weight of message question. I think we are in this kind of bubble, both because of proximity in DC, but also because of the work that we do and the issues that we cover. We see all the ads. I mean, you mentioned this in New Jersey, right? You've watched all these ads a million times. Most people aren't seeing the ads. They're only seeing the ads because they're not logging into Ad Impact or CMAG to watch every campaign ad. They're only seeing the ones that show up on their TV. And the Earl Sears campaign has a significant resource disadvantage over against the Spanberger campaign. So I'm almost curious whether, even if this issue is salient for voters at this moment in time, which I think, to your point, is an open question, are enough voters going to see it, right? Are her ads going to reach enough people to actually make this a major issue? Or is it just going to be drowned out by all of the money that Spanberger has to pursue her own message?
I do think it's going to be drowned out by the Spanberger ads. I mean, I'm in the DC media market, so I see them. I was at lunch probably a few weeks ago, and within 5 or 6 minutes, I counted probably 2 or 3 Spanberger ads and 1 Winsome Earl Sears ad. So just by the sheer volume of ads that Spanberger is putting out there. And she's also not talking about this issue. She's focused on things like rising costs. So I do think that the conversation that Winsome Earl Sears is trying to drag Spanberger into is going to be drowned out from what voters are actually seeing on their TVs and on their phones.
Yeah. When I can envision a future in the middle of November where if Spanberger wins, the Republicans will dismiss it as very unique to Virginia, right? That Earl Sears didn't run a great campaign. She didn't raise enough money. There was a disproportionate amount of people impacted by cuts, firings of federal employees, and they'll dismiss it. I guess my question, Abby, for you is, when you're talking to sources, what are there specific lessons that either party is looking to learn from the campaigns and the results in Virginia?
I think, we see this every year when you're looking at these races in specific states and you want to look at the national angle, but these are states and they're so unique from each other. I think the big lesson that both parties are going to take away with this is, what are the specific issues in this state that matter to voters? While, Trump hit a lot in that, Kamala Harris is for they, them ad, which Winsome Earl-Sears is kind of, trying to replicate, that might not be as big of an issue as it was, nationally last year, as it would be in Virginia this time around. I think what they're each going to learn is, what are the issues that matter in each state? How do you pinpoint them? How do you target them? Like you said, the federal workforce right now in Virginia is being hit hard by these Doge cuts. That's something that Abigail Spanberger has, leaned into, but also attacked Winsome Earl-Sears on for her support of these cuts, but also looking at how, Vivek Ramaswamy is going down to Richmond to campaign with Winsome Earl-Sears. So I think looking at that, Republicans and Democrats are really going to have to evaluate after this election, what are the specific, local issues that matter in these races? Because, Trump won re-election. He's in his second term. You don't have to focus a lot on those national headwinds as much than you have to do now looking at these specific states.
Yeah. And one thing I'll be looking for, to the extent that we could pull any sort of national information out, there are two districts that I'm very curious about how they land in both of these governor's races. In Virginia, the first district, which is held by Rob Whitman, a Republican, has not been competitive at the House level before, but the trend there is very favorable to Democrats. If Spanberger can win that district, I think that is off to the races for Democrats in that seat ahead of the 26 midterms. And similarly, in New Jersey's 9th district, Democrat Nellie Poe, that was a solid Democratic seat up until about 2 minutes ago when Trump won it after Biden had carried it by 20 points in 2020. This is one of these majority Hispanic seats in North Jersey that we were talking about. If Chitterelli can carry that seat, even if he's losing statewide, for instance, I think that will be another indicator that district is now firmly on the battleground of House races. And regardless of what these results might be for House races in California or Texas or Ohio or whatever, I think there are some concrete things that we can learn about really important races in these two states ahead of next year's elections.
Yeah, and going back to my other point, we can guarantee that whichever party wins these races is going to say this is just a taste of what's to come, and whichever party loses, like, oh, this was just a unique individual. This doesn't matter at all. That's it. That we can guarantee that. And now it's time for our final segment, Look What I Found, where we talk about anything that we have been into recently. It's books, movies, food. It can be anything. Usually it's not political. Jacob, what did you find?
So, Nathan, you said just off camera here that you didn't know what I was going to say, but you've been looking at it for the entire show. And I'm talking, of course, about that guy right there, Angus, the Highland cow, who's sitting on my couch right now. This is my Highland cow plushie, and this is his official, introduction on the world stage here. But I acquired him about a month ago in Bethany Beach, or in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, at a claw machine at the amusement park called Funland. Now, the claw machine is not supposed to generate wins for its players, right? Everyone knows this. These are scams. These are for taking your hard-earned money and disappearing it into the maws of the amusement park industrial complex. And yet, I saw this claw machine full of these Highland cow plushies. And one thing about me that I may or may not have mentioned, I went to summer camp as a child. Abby, you're getting the full story here. In the hills of West Virginia, and it was run by the Scots. It was run by this Scottish man, and he kept Highland cows in West Virginia on the grounds of the camp. And so I grew up around these Highland cows. So I've always had an affinity for them. So when I saw this, I was like, I have to try. So I put my $2 in, and, me and my girlfriend, really tried to do with surgical precision, get the claw to exactly where we thought it would work. And let me tell you, we did not unclench our fists until that thing had dropped right into the slot to be taken out of the machine, because I was sure that at the last minute something would happen. A gust of wind would come and sway the claw back into the to the depths from which it came, and it didn't. And so now I've got this great Highland cow, Angus, and I will never play a claw machine game again, because I think I've used up my one win for this lifetime, and I think I got a good win for it.
And you did this in the first shot, $2.
First shot, $2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Usually those are like $40 stuffed animals. So I'm throwing the money to get them out.
Just keep feeding it. Just keep feeding the machine. Yeah. Well, that's impressive. That is. And bringing your life full circle through a machine, like this is almost a magazine piece, I guess. you could write on it. Abby, what did you find?
So I know we talked about earlier the shared trauma of college newspaper editor-in-chiefs. I watched the first episode of The Paper last night. Huge Office fan growing up. And so I was a little I'll watch it. I'll try it out. It takes place in Toledo, Ohio. So there you go. And growing up, my dad worked in sales, and he always said, I can't watch The Office. It's too real. This is my day-to-day life. I can't do it. And so I sat down to watch that TV show last night, and I was like, okay, I can see what my dad's talking about. This is I'm just comparing my life to what's happening in this TV show. Journalism has no money. It's something I dealt with on the college paper. Guy went to Ohio University. So I'll have to watch a few episodes and see if I can relax when I sit down and watch this TV show. But last night I was a little stressed, and I was having this existential oh my God, what is happening to journalism moment as I watched that.
Yeah, I always used to joke that there needed to be a sitcom about a college newspaper. That was an area ripe for exploration. But I think this is the best we're going to get, at least for now, is The Paper.
For sure.
And I haven't watched it, but are you lining up characters from the show with people that are in your day-to-day life that you're working with now?
Not yet, but maybe if I get down a few episodes, I'll start picking out my hotliners, and they can be on the TV show in my mind.
That's okay. Only tens of people listen to this, so you're not incriminating yourself too much.
Unfortunately, they all work for Hotline, so
that's right. I'm pretty sure. I think that is a very real comment. Well, along those lines, along the TV lines, I found that I still do not like award shows. I have never watched an entire award show in my life, but I watched more of the Emmys on Sunday night because Nate Bargatze, my favorite comedian right now, I guess, was hosting. And so I thought, all right, this is great. And so a lot of his parts I was a fan of, but just some of the other stuff, I was just, I don't know. I was not into it. I probably would have been more into it if I'd actually watched these television shows, but I just couldn't do it. So I was glad he got that opportunity, but I found that I'm not into award shows still.
I feel like they're that kind of thing I turn on Sunday night when I want to wind down and maybe an hour, and then I'm going to bed, but I'm not going to stay up and watch the entire thing.
Nathan, the first journalistic article I ever wrote was for my high school paper, and it was a review of the Ellen DeGeneres Oscars.
Wow.
Yeah, which would have been, I guess, in 2015. So
how many people read that article?
There were 2,000 people in the high school. They passed out the newspaper. Everyone got a copy of the paper. We had decent circulation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There are probably other things to say that are better uses of my time than watching them, but I'll find something else that is probably equally nourishing from a knowledge standpoint. But if you haven't, if you're not familiar with Nate Bargatze, he kind of got a little more famous when he did SNL with the George Washington sketch, but they did a version of that at the beginning of the show where he is Philo T. Farnsworth, the inventor of TV, and that is probably worth watching if that clip is online, and maybe we'll link to that as well. But all right, Abby, thank you. We went a lot of places you probably didn't think this conversation was going to go, but we appreciate you being along for the ride.
Well, thank you. It was great to chat.
At Inside Elections, we provide nonpartisan analysis of congressional, presidential, and gubernatorial races. With a combination of reporting and data, we break down the key races and bring valuable context to complex elections. Go to InsideElections.com to subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter. We have individual subscriptions as well as group packages that are tailored for association and corporate PACs. If you like this episode, please subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. If you're watching on YouTube, click on the thumbs up button and subscribe there as well. If you didn't like today's episode, please email the estate of Philo T. Farnsworth. We also want to thank our producers, Alan Tazinski and Melissa Lenner of Pretty Easy Podcasts, and our associate producer, Conrad Tolosa. Please come back and join us again next time.